Too long, Africa has lived through a history of slavery, theft, foreign rule, and the darkest place in human history that the world brought to her doorstep. 400 years later, Africa's curse have birthed a dynamic, onward, and rising people. Join the Inspire E-Conference 2021 as great minds edify on the positioning of the new rising star. Starting on the 9th to the 14th of August. Africa, get ready.
Bishop Ngwiza is the presiding bishop of Faith Ministries International, a family of churches which grew out of Zimbabwe and is now represented in South Africa, Botswana, and the United Kingdom. He has had over 40 years of church planting and pioneering in different cultures. He has worked with different national and international movements in the body of Christ and as well as in the marketplace. During his leadership of his market, Zambuko Trust, a microfinance organization that grew to a world-class provider serving the poor and the marginalized. He has traveled globally, visiting similar organizations in Africa, in Asia, and Latin America. At one time, he was the president and CEO of Dawn Ministries International, a church planting organization which he led from Orlando, Florida, with regional offices in every continent. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Bishop Ngwiza to speak to us this evening. Bishop, you are welcome.
Just to say good afternoon to all who are listening to us from Africa, from across the world. It's been an incredible week. I'm delighted to be a part of this. It's just been, exciting to sit under the feet of men and women who are leaders in their field, and it's been an incredibly rich experience listening to all the presentations. I don't have charts and whatnot to offer you this afternoon, but I hope that what we share will be of help, just adding on to what other speakers have already spoken about. So let's see if I'm going to be able to share my screen. Titus, I need for you to tell me if my screen is on, because at this point in time, I'm flying blind.
The screen is on now.
All right. All right. If
you should be able to enable your video now, Bishop.
All right. Okay. Let's see if we can do that. No, it's still refusing to go on. People can hear my voice, so let's just go with that. Having had a challenge with the last speaker, we really don't want to frustrate our audience. My title is Harnessing Africa's Resources and Potential. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to speak about the diaspora. I'm going to speak about fathers and sons. That's what I'd like to do. If you can see my screen, then we're good to go. So, if we look at the scriptures, there are many examples of people who worked in diaspora or who were called while they were in diaspora. Joseph was in diaspora. We've already looked at that. Moses was in diaspora when God, spoke to him. David was living in the land of the Philistines in Ziklag. He'd escaped from Saul, and he was living outside, Israel. Daniel and his friends were in Babylon when God used them mightily. And of course, Jesus himself, our Lord Jesus, was in diaspora. He was not in his home country. He was, away from home. Let me talk about, before we talk about, an example of someone in diaspora, and then talk about fathers and sons, allow me to share a little bit on how God builds. God builds generationally. First of all, you need to know that God builds generationally. We serve the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob. There's always the 3 generations in the room. This is very important for us to understand in Africa, because there's a lot of new money people coming into business and making money and perhaps lacking the foundations of generations. That's why we struggle sometimes with keeping wealth, because we do not have those foundations. In Zimbabwe, where I grew up, we have Indian business, businessmen. And there's an adage that, when the Indians cough, the economy catches a cold because of their place, in the economic, sphere of the country. Now you'll find that, Indian young men will grow up in those days, they'll grow up behind the counter and they'd learn to stand reaching for, the keys on the till. Consequently, because they lived together, they understood business in a different way from the African business people. Business was in their bloodstream. It was within, their system. And you'd find that in Zimbabwe, for instance, you'll hardly ever come across an Indian young man who drives a Mercedes. They drive Toyota Corollas. They understand the value of money. They understand the principle of delayed gratification. They understand, family, run businesses. I put it to you, ladies and gentlemen, that if we are going to see Africa get to where it should get to, we need to build generationally. We need to build generation. By the way, can I just throw this in? We need to change the way we spell the word Africa. It's not spelled with a C. That's what the colonizers, changed it to. The original spelling of the word Africa is with a K. Okay, and so let's change the paradigm here. I don't know about you, but I get very frustrated when people don't call my name properly. I get frustrated when people don't spell my name properly. It's a bit of a frustration. Your identity is very crucial. And for us as Africans, we need to regain our identity. And part of that just, has to do with the spelling of our name. It's not C, it's K. Okay, so if Africa is going to get to where it should get to, we need to build generationally, not only in business, but in church, in society. We need to build generationally. Secondly, God builds relationally. Fatherhood and sonship is very, very important to God. He is God our Father. The Lord Jesus came to introduce him not just as God in heaven, but as our Father. So fatherhood is absolutely important to God. When I look at Africa and the challenges that we are facing today, I see a lot of orphans running around. I see a lot of young men in ministry who do not have fathers, who are starting, from scratch on their own, carrying briefcases, calling themselves bishops and all kinds of titles, apostles and whatnot. We get the same thing happening, in business. They get a little bit of money and they run off and they're doing crazy things. If we are going to build, then we need to build relationally. We need true apostles in the marketplace as well as in the church. We need true prophets, in the marketplace. We need, teachers. We need pastors, we need apostles, we need, some of these relationships, fatherhood and sonship. We need fathers in the marketplace who are going to mentor young leaders in terms of, how to grow wealth and how to, keep that wealth and how to, invest it properly and how to develop, lasting wealth with real solid foundations, not paper money that disappears or like paper fires, but real solid wealth that will take us into future generations. So God builds generationally, he builds relationally. Thirdly, he builds revelationally. It is important to realize that God builds on the basis of revelation. In any given period of time, there is a particular revelation, that's running through. And this determines your measure of faith, your ability to respond, to what God is doing at that given point in time. It also determines your sphere, of influence. Your revelation determines your measure of faith. It determines your sphere of influence. It determines your level of authority. And so it is important for us to know what God is doing at this time. What is the revelation of the revelation is progressive. We know more now and are in a better position now than the prophets of old, because they didn't understand some of the things that they were talking about. Because of time and because of what, of history and what God has done, and there's more revelation now than there was then. And it's important for Africa to understand the revelation that we must build on at this time. We told of the sons of Issachar, how that they understood the times and understood what Israel, ought to do. Do we understand our times, and do we understand what Africa ought to do? I believe that, what has transpired this week has given us a taste of what God is doing. I pray that you've received revelation concerning the times that we are living in and what God is wanting to do, with Africa. I pray from the different speakers, it's been a rich feast. And my prayer is that you're not going away hungry, but that you understand, what God is doing by way of the revelation that is given to us, at this time. We fight according to the prophetic words that, hang over us. And if we don't understand our prophetic word, Paul speaking to Timothy speaks about, stirs up that prophetic word. If we don't, understand that prophetic word, then we are not going to fight, with meaning, and we are not going to fight with confidence. It is important that we have our own revelation at this time concerning what God, is doing. Our fathers understood something of what God was doing through their time. There's a fresh revelation of what God is doing at this time. And it is important that we understand that. Oh, by the way, talking about relationships, just to let you know that I have known Paul Wafula. I first met him when he was a much younger man than he is now. This is in the early 80s. I know, I've been to his home. I've spent a night in his home. I've known his father, Reverend Nicholas, Wafula. Over all these years, we've worked with them. We've worked with the leaders in Uganda over many years in the Deliverance Church movement. We've worked with Bishop Masinde for many years. It was a joy yesterday to listen to Joy. I consider her as, one of our daughters. Well, she has many fathers because of the position of her father. She has many fathers, across the world, and I consider myself one of them. And it was such a privilege. It's such a privilege to work relationally, across the continent. This is important. What Inspire is doing is bringing us together. And I want to pray, ladies and gentlemen, that we would all, work together, that would build relationships. When we talk about these breakout rooms and so on, let's exchange notes, let's exchange contacts, let's build relationships across the continent. Let's have a network, of relationships across the continent where, we relate to one another and we know one another. Listen, this is a small, I know Africa is big. All right, we've talked about this. Africa is very big. People in the West actually don't know that. When you go to America and you say, I'm going back to Zimbabwe, they'll say, I've got a friend in Egypt. Do you know him? Well, let's make that a reality so that when people say, I've got a friend in Kenya, you'll be able to say, yes, I know that person, or Ghana or Gambia or wherever, that you'll be able to say, I know somebody, in that country. Make it a challenge. Let me throw a challenge, across, to you. Talking about, relationships and so on, make it a challenge to know someone in each of the African countries, to be in touch with someone in each of the African countries. That will bring about synergies that will, enable us to forge ahead very quickly. All right, so this is how God builds. It's important. I'm just laying a bit of a foundation for, what I'm going to talk about concerning fathers and sons. What every life needs, these four things, just, tuck these things away. Every life needs a dream. Okay, every life needs a dream. What's your dream? What's our dream as Africans? Where are we going? Every life needs a dream. Make sure that you protect your dream. Make sure that your dream is not stolen, from you. Make sure that nobody pours cold water on your dream, but protect your dream. Every dream needs a plan. We've been challenged so much. Reverend Ashaye, lives down the road from me here in the UK, and is a good friend of mine. I am just delighted to know this man. He is full of wisdom. He is full of, vision. He didn't tell you that his dream is to build 41 cities in the next 20 to 30 years in Africa. And he's already begun on that. Now, Reverend Ashaye, forgive me if you're listening, but I'm telling on you. You didn't say this, but I'd like for people to know how big a dream you carry. Okay, and he outlined, if you sit down with him, he'll outline the plan to you. Listen, your dream is only a dream until it, has a plan. And so every dream needs a plan. Every plan needs a team. We've been talking about this all week. No lone rangers. We all, are family. We ought to be working with others. Every plan needs a team. If your plan is singular and you're working on it by yourself, well, you aren't going to get very far. But they say if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go with somebody. And so every plan needs a team. And fourthly, every team needs a coach, who's mentoring you, who's guiding you, who's helping you. For us in the ministry, we're talking about pastoral care, personal, pastoral care, somebody who watches, over you, either a coach, a mentor. I know there's a difference between coaching and mentoring, but I'm just using these terms interchangeably. But I've had the same pastor for close on 40 years now, and it's been such a rich relationship. Bishop JB and myself, share the same pastor. It's been such a rich relationship, which is what brought us, together to the level, of closeness that we have today, because we are family. And so that's what, every life needs. All right, let's look at the life of, somebody in diaspora, Nehemiah and Jerusalem's walls. I'm going to make an assumption that you know the Bible and that, you read your Bible regularly and that you know the story of Nehemiah. So Nehemiah, we see the birth of a dream when Hakaliah, comes to Nehemiah and, tells him about the state of the walls and the gates in Jerusalem. He says to him, the walls are broken down and the gates are burnt with fire. I'm addressing this specifically to those in diaspora, those of you who are listening, from diaspora. Information is very, very important. The birth of a dream is guided by the quality of information that you have. It's very important if you're going to invest in Africa, if you're going to, whatever you're going to do in Africa, let it be birthed out of correct, information. And then we see that led to prayer. Let prayer guide and direct, our footsteps. May we be filled, with a hunger to hear from God. Don't just, pick up your bags and run to Africa. Don't just, invest in the next exciting, but let information and prayer, let your prayers be guided by, accurate, information, and let, your dream be shaped by prayer. Nehemiah spends time in prayer. And then we see Nehemiah before the king. and he obtains permission to go and build the walls and to hang the gates, and he's given a letter. Friends, the place of prayer is a powerful place. It is the place where we're going to be given a letter of authority that enables us to go into whatever marketplace we're going to go into. And for those of you in diaspora, as you seek to engage, the continent, make sure that you've heard from the king, and make sure that you've got, a letter of authority. When God has released, that authority to you, resources aren't going to be a problem. Nehemiah is told that he can, he can have whatever materials, he needed to rebuild the walls because of that letter. When we have the authority from God, when there's been a release from heaven, and you spend time in prayer and you've broken through, God gives you that authority, that letter of authority. And then when he gets there, he does some more research. He doesn't just go by the report that Akala had given him, but he does his own research. He finds out for himself. He inspects the walls for himself. Not when he has done that, he brings the leadership, of the city of Jerusalem together. He obtains buy-in and builds, a team. He's not going to do it by himself, but he's going to build a team. And in this team, everyone is going to build next to their house. Important that we begin with what we have, and we begin building next to where we are. Before, you're talking to Reverend Ashaya, you spoke about this. Before you build a multinational, corporation, you got to start with where you are. You got to start with the little that you have, building next to your home. And what is the strategy? Of course, it's building next to your wall. It is important for us to have a strategy. It is important to us for us to spend time planning. If you're going to do a project and you had an hour to do it, if you plan straight into it without spending time in planning and thinking it through carefully, you would not accomplish, good results. It is important that you sharpen the axe, that you have a clear strategy of how you're going to do what you're going to do. And then as you go into Africa, there are going to be internal enemies and obstacles that you're going to face. Nehemiah faced quite a few of these internal opposition and obstacles. The people were poor, they had mortgaged their lands, they'd even given some of their children as slaves, and so on. And Nehemiah deals with all of this. When we get to countries in Africa, I think it's important to realize some of the challenges that are there, and to help our brothers and sisters in terms of overcoming some of these obstacles. It's very difficult to talk about a big dream when people are hungry. We got to take care of some of the elementary issues that they are grappling with, so that they're able to flow with us. And then of course he deals with external opposition. There will be external opposition, whether we're talking about multinationals or other countries that are milking Africa. When they hear that we are bending, we are coming together, and we are closing the gaps. When they hear particularly that Africa is not negotiating as 51, 52 states, but is negotiating as a continent, when they hear that the walls are coming together, that we're building, beginning to hang the gates and so on, there's going to be a noise that's going to come from there. You can be sure that there will be, fierce opposition. I watched a video a couple of days ago, and it left me a bit disturbed, talking about the number of African leaders that have died within the last year. People like Magufuli of Tanzania and others around the continent that have died in the last year. And in this video, now there are all sorts of conspiracy theories flying around, but in this video, this person ended the video by saying this: guess what all these people had in common? They refused to receive the vaccine for their nations. Now, I'm not trying to peddle, conspiracy theories here, but I'm just merely trying to underscore the fact that we have enemies. And that when you stand against some of these big boys, they're going to want to eliminate you if you are standing in their way. And so let's be conscious as we get together as Africans, that there are all these, external forces that we're going to have to deal with. Not everybody, is our friend. Not everybody who comes with aid is our friend. And as Africans, we're going to need to learn how to negotiate. One of the problems we have is the inability to negotiate. When you look at a guy like Jacob was a master negotiator. He was very good at negotiating, whether he's negotiating with his brother, Esau, or whether he's negotiating with his uncle Laban, wherever he is, Jacob is a master negotiator. So as Africans, we're going to need to up our game when it comes to negotiating. We leave so much on the table, and we walk away with so little. We are satisfied with crumbs when we can actually, have the big cake. So that's talking about Nehemiah, who was in diaspora, who comes and has a vision for, his nation. I pray that Africa's sons will come back to Africa, and that they will rebuild the walls, and that they will hang the gates. I pray that, Africa's sons will return, and whatever wealth they've received while they've been, in diaspora, that they'll be willing to invest some of that in Africa. I pray that we will get a dream like Nehemiah did, that when we read in the papers, when we listen to what's going on in Africa, that it will so stir us that we will want to do something about, the situation back in our countries of origin. Invest something in your country of origin. Every one of us needs to go give back something to our village. If Africa is your village, you need to give something back in gratitude, of that village, because it's that village that raised you. You may take away the African from the village, but you can never, in some ways, take away the village from the African. There's something of Africa in those of us who were born in Africa, who are of African descent, that will not go away. And so make sure that you invest back in Africa. Just very quickly, the 5 Ps in Nehemiah's story. You've got principles, you've got privileges. How do you handle? First of all, if you're going to lead or invest back, or so, what are your principles? How are you going to handle your privileges? And what are going to be your priorities? How are you going to handle power? How are you going to handle people? What's going to be the place of prayer? These are P's that run throughout Nehemiah's life, characterize his life. I pray that our leadership may be characterized by this. Charles Swindoll speaks about 4 of these. I've added the 5th one, prayer. Nehemiah is a man of principle. He's a man who knows how to handle his privileges, and he keeps his priorities. He knows how to handle power, and he's a people person, and he's a person of prayer. Throughout his book, you're hearing him talking to the Lord, conversational style. May God help us to be people of prayer. All right, I want to talk in this part about fathers and sons very quickly. Again, we have many orphans. I see this over here. I've just come to the UK, and it's amazing to see the number of orphans that are running around. And if we are going to, do something of lasting value in terms of transformation, it is important that we understand, the principle of fatherhood. I've already said that God works, relationally. And so let's look very quickly at David's, legacy. In Acts chapter 13 and verse 36, the Bible tells us that David served his generation by the will of God and then fell asleep. Now, as I've meditated on that over the years, I've wondered what it means to serve God in that way. If God if the Holy Spirit was to write one or two verses in the New Testament, assuming that the book of Acts is still continuing, if he was to write about you, what would he say? He says of David, David served his generation by the will of God. And then fell out. What does that mean? So let's look at David's legacy. As I've meditated on that, I've come up with 5 things that I feel characterized David's legacy. When David died, he left 5 things behind. And I pray that this will help us as we think about fathers. David, number 1, left a clear testimony. The Bible says of him, God says, my servant David. David formed the benchmark. He established the benchmark of how God viewed any king after him. Everybody was measured by the standard that David set. Friends, we need fathers who are going to set a standard that sons are going to emulate. We need a clear testimony that the world, will see. So David lives a clear testimony. How clear is our testimony? How clear are our footprints? And are those behind us able to see where to place their feet? Fathers, that leave a clear testimony. Fathers that leave a powerful dream, the building of the temple. David could not build the temple because God said, you fought too many wars. Their vision was too big for David. It was intergenerational. If your dream is fulfillable within your time, it's too small. Try and trade it in for a bigger one. We need generational, visions. We need visions that we can leave to future generations. And I worry about what I'm seeing over here, in the diaspora, in the UK. The first generation that came along seems to have an idea of God. But what I'm seeing in their sons, in the next generations, is a move away completely from the faith. They're imbibing the culture of the West and walking away, from the faith. I'm seeing young people in drugs. I'm seeing young people in gangs. I'm seeing a big danger where if fathers do not work very hard to be in the home and not be absentee fathers, to show the way, live a clear testimony, and impart a dream to future generations, we are in danger of losing our way. I pray that, we as leaders will have that kind of a powerful dream. That's the kind of dream that, David left. And then he left abundant resources. He left all his treasure, for the construction of the temple. Fathers these days are working very hard to amass wealth that they will leave to their sons who, within a very short space of time, because they have no idea of wealth creation and wealth preservation, within a very short space of time, will have, squandered that wealth. I want to challenge every one of us to think about writing in our wills something for the kingdom of God, ensuring that we are laying treasures for future generations to use in the kingdom of God. Friends, if we don't buy land, if we don't buy buildings, some of our friends who are, our counterparts in other faiths are busy doing that. Here in the UK, they are buying church buildings, converting them into apartments, or just keeping them. There's going to come a day when our children who inherit our dreams will say, we have no place to worship in. We have no buildings. They will be renting buildings from, other faiths who will determine, when they meet and when they don't meet. It is important that not only should we live dreams, but that we leave resources to fund those dreams. Abundant resources is what, David left. Are we creating resources for the future generations so that they can carry on with the work of God? David had a clear successor, Solomon. In fact, David is the only king who we read of who was succeeded while he was still alive. He's the only king whose successor, took over while he was alive. So Solomon, the challenge of succession in Africa, the challenge of succession in the church, in business, areas, and so on. I like, this quote that, a good leader is one who prepares to live the day he starts. A good leader is one who prepares, to live the day he starts. Another definition that I've really enjoyed using lately is a leader is someone who is helping his followers to become like the one he is following. A leader is one who is helping his followers to become like the one he is following. This is where Paul says, follow me, even as I follow Christ. So how are we dealing with this succession? Succession in Africa is a huge challenge. May God help us not to hold on to titles. May God help us not to hang on to positions, but to release the younger generation. This has been my cry, from the time that I started, in ministry, raising leaders who are going to take over from us and not worrying about, holding on to positions. David finally leaves strong warnings. How many of you know that there are dangers that, our young people are facing in business, in the church, in society? There are Shimeis who had cursed, David. There's Joab, loyal, but, a man of his own, a mind, wanting to do, things his own way. Adonijah, who felt that he should have been the next king because he was the eldest. And so David leaves these warnings. He sits his son down and he says, be careful of these people. And we need fathers who are going to, sit their sons down and give them warnings. One of the saddest things that we are seeing right now is fathers dying alone because of COVID. We're seeing, our loved ones departing in isolation, being handled by strangers, in plastic gowns and not being able to pass on last-minute instructions to those of their loved ones. This is a tragedy. This is one of the saddest things about, COVID-19, that we are not able to say goodbye, to our loved ones, and they're not able to transmit. There are certain things that are reserved for last minute that, our loved ones would pass on to us, but they're dying without, being able to pass that, I did an interview on a talk show a little while ago, and the host, asked me an incredible question it haunts me. He had just lost his parents, both his mother and father, and niece within the space of about a week to 10 days. And he says to me, Bishop, did my mother deserve to die alone? Did my mother deserve to die alone? Hey, let me not digress here, but strong warnings. We're gonna need to pass on the baton. We're gonna need to be careful how we're passing on the baton. Fathers and sons, we need fathers who are able to pass the baton onto their sons. Let me look at the other side. That's David, but what does Solomon receive? Solomon asks for wisdom. He goes to God and he offers 1,000 bulls. One bull would probably have been enough, but he offered 1,000. What was he saying? He was saying, God, I need you. I need more of you. I need wisdom. He had a big ask. These days, we have young people who are just not hungry for God. They give the barest minimum and they walk away. Solomon asks for wisdom. May God help the next generation to ask for wisdom. Wisdom, is the ability to apply knowledge and information correctly. And I pray with all the knowledge that you guys have from the internet, from everywhere, I pray that you will have wisdom. And that's not going to come as you use the Bible as you do Google, where you just go, to Google for, certain information, or using it as a dial in, when you're ordering a meal or something like that. We need to dwell in the presence of God if we're going to have, his wisdom. David left this. If you left this for Solomon, if you listen to Solomon in Proverbs, he talks about this from his father and what his father taught him. And then he judges righteously. Remember the two women and their sons. There's a fight out there in the marketplace for justice. Solomon rules righteously, judges, righteously. And there's, prosperity as a result of that. Then he builds with excellence. Whatever you do, young people, a future generation, make sure that you're walking in wisdom, that you're walking, judging righteously, that you're building with excellence. We've had so much this week about, being the best at what you do. Solomon built, did everything with excellence. The Queen of Sheba was left speechless because of the excellence, around the way that Solomon conducted himself. Think about, handling the glory of God. The way that, Solomon built the temple, the way that he worshipped. How do we handle, the glory of God? This is something that you need to receive, that you learn to handle the glory of God. You learn to handle the fear of God. Diffusing time bombs. Unfortunately, Solomon failed, in this area. How many of you know that every one of us is a time bomb ticking away underneath, our seats? That time bomb is just waiting for the right situation, the right circumstance. The devil is good at waiting for your platform to grow to its highest so that he can release that time bomb and just blow you to smithereens. The secret is, when we walk with fathers, is being helped to find the time bomb and to diffuse it. Solomon failed from day one. Even before he asked for wisdom, Solomon had already set the time bomb ticking. The Bible says that he married Pharaoh's daughter. God had said to the Israelites that they were not to go back to Egypt. He'd say to them that, an Israeli king, this is Samuel, an Israeli king was not to marry a foreigner. And Solomon does that. And guess what? That became his downfall. It was just a matter of time before the bomb, went off and destroyed him. It was the love of foreign women that destroyed, Solomon. And so we're talking about David, the fathers handing on the baton. We're talking about the sons, receiving the baton. If we are going to build, if we're going to bring about transformation, if we are going to harness the resources of Africa, and bring about transformation, it is important that fathers and sons, work together. There's a challenge in Malachi where he says, "Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. You will turn the hearts of the fathers to the children and the hearts of the children to their fathers, lest I come and strike the earth with a curse." As we round off, I want to ask you, who is your father? Do you have a father? Just that challenge. Do you have a father? And who is your father? How do you know your father? Genesis 22. As Abraham walks up the mountain, he is walking with Isaac. The servants have been left behind. Your father is the man who takes you up on the mountain, who calls you up higher to meet with the Lord, separates you from others and takes you to a place of revelation and a place of worship. Father is one who takes you alone and imparts something of God to you. Father is one who carries a knife and carries fire. Abraham walks up that mountain with fire in his hands and a knife. Father is the one who will cut you when you need cutting. Who will heap coals of fire on you when you need them. If you're not disciplined, if you're not corrected, you are a bastard, according to Hebrews chapter 12. How do you know you're a son? Well, if you're willing to obey, to carry, firewood. Abraham, put firewood on Isaac's back. If you're willing to follow, even when you don't understand, he says to his father, "Father, where is the lamb for a sacrifice?" And Abraham answers sheepishly and says, "Well, the Lord will provide a lamb for himself." Not a very clear answer. Sometimes we want clear explanations and so on, but there are times when we have to follow, even when we don't understand. A son is one who will be there when his father, when God speaks to his father. Imagine the privilege that Isaac had on that day to hear God for himself, to hear the covenant repeated, to hear the covenant, confirmed again. We need sons who hang on to the fathers to the end. Elisha says, "I will not leave you. I will leave you because I want a double portion of your anointing." He would not be dissuaded. He stuck it to the end. We need sons who are going to hang on to the coattails of their fathers and be there when God, speaks to them. Joshua does not depart from the mouth of the tent of meeting. That's why he ends up taking over from Moses. We need sons, who are going to stick close to their fathers. So fathers and sons. Africa needs, fathers and sons if we're going to receive the blessing of the Lord. And I pray as we close, I pray that you will be a father. If we're speaking to fathers here, I pray that you will know what to leave behind, that you will leave a clear testimony, that you will leave a powerful dream, a vision, that you will leave resources, that you will, have a clear successor, and that you leave warnings. And for you sons, that you will follow in the footsteps of Solomon. Brothers and sisters, thank you so much for the privilege of sharing with you today. I pray that you've enjoyed the conference, and may God bless you.
Wow, thank you very, very much, Bishop Ngwiza. May God richly bless you. That was very inspiring, and I'm sure the people have been blessed. It's been interesting to learn and to appreciate the issues of sonship and stewardship. I believe that God is doing something new in our continent, and we will not remain the same again. Amen.